My name's Andy Quested. I'm from the BBC and my official job title is Head of Technology for HD and 3D. But I have discovered that because I've got a D in my job title, that anything that comes along with a D in, I get to be head of it for technology terms. So welcome to UHD or Ultra HD and everything else. I was asked to come and do a presentation really more about the future, and it said it's starting with 3D and moving further on. And one of the really nice things about my job is I get to play with technologies quite early on. I get to sort of assess what they're going to be like, and I get to, as I said, as Milan was saying, you play with things that you really enjoy. And for that reason, I've just called this presentation Stuff. And anybody likes QR codes, that's my contact details if anybody wants to scan the screen later. And for some time now, I've been looking at technology in a slightly different way. And what I've been thinking is that the technologies are always coming along. And this was a picture I found doing some research into early 3D technology. And there was also a comment that came along with it that someone had sort of plagiarized and a few other people had bastardized. But fundamentally, there's just bucket loads of technologies out there just waiting for the most inappropriate time to launch. And that's what it seems at the moment. We're just getting technology after technology. We haven't quite finished the last one when the next one comes in. And it's beginning to sort of stack up behind us. Now, one of the reasons for sitting down and not standing up at a lectern is, number one, I hate standing at lecterns because you never know if your flies are undone and what's going on. But number two, I think it's much more interactive. I'd actually like to sit down there and do this. But what I want to talk about is this whole movement of technology from where we are now to where we might be by 2020. And I want to do that by using two predictions. But to set those predictions up, I just want to put some context around what the BBC's involvement in technology has been. And it's always been the case that quite a lot of people for many generations or many decades have expected us to lead in technology. Today is the 90th anniversary of radio, or the start of the BBC, and it's been quite interesting. I've just looked at the television history from 1930 onwards, and every decade we have done something, or in collaboration or on our own, that has moved the industry on. So from 405 line television right up to DVB-T2, which is the enabler for HD on terrestrial broadcasting in the UK. And it's this sort of driving technology that's allowed us to play around with other technologies and to try and fit them into this. We're just getting into what I call the mature stage of HD. In other words, we're not fully HD yet. It's a very good market. You've just seen some very exciting HD pictures from Arri and the other camera manufacturers around here. We're beginning to find that cameras are sitting in all the areas that they traditionally sat in with SD. There is a camera for every event nearly, and actually the cost of making HD is around what the cost of making SD would be if it was still around today. In other words, it's roughly cost neutral. There's always a little bit extra here, there's a little bit extra there. Fundamentally though, it's about the same price as it would have been had we still been using SD today. There have been some disastrous technologies, and everybody knows I'm completely against the use of stills cameras for making television programs, for the reasons they don't produce good moving pictures. And I have I'm not ashamed to say Canon have supported us in this attitude for quite some time. And they don't stand up. They look good, they look sexy, but that's not a good enough reason for using them. So we've had some good technologies and we've had some bad technologies. And we've also had some good and some bad predictions. And what I want to start with, so now is the time to start. Anybody that doesn't want to talk about technologies can leave now, but now is the time to start. September 2004, so roughly 8 years ago, there was a prediction. This prediction said that the general consensus of opinion in the display industry is the preferred size for large domestic TVs would settle around 37 to 42 inches. Did anybody blink when we passed 50 as the average screen size in the UK? Now, who made this prediction? It was in the BBC R&D white paper of 2004. Now, they sometimes do make good predictions, they sometimes make bad predictions, and I think this particular one was a bad prediction. So it's very dangerous to make predictions about the future, but I will make one towards the end, and I'll be happy to come back in 8 years' time and defend it or not defend it. So, first of all, I'd like you to all stand up. Okay, I'm going to sit down now while you all stand up. And I want you to sit down if you have a television at home that's 50 inches or larger. Did anybody sit down? Okay, let's try 42 or larger. Good, okay. 36. Okay. 3D, any size? Okay. The rest of you might as well go now because you are just not in touch with our audience. There are 3 rules for buying televisions in this country. Size matters, bigger is better, and mine is bigger than yours. They are the only 3 rules. You will buy the television you can physically get into your house, and actually if you can afford it and it's bigger, you'll do some building work to get a bigger one in. I don't think we're any different from anybody else in the world. So out there, televisions are getting bigger, and the public are looking at technologies in a very, very different way to those that work in the industry. If I do this with BBC producers, I tend to get exactly the same result. Who on earth would have a television above 22 inches? And oh, by the way, what's a flat screen? We've got to start thinking like the public start thinking. We've also got to start thinking about how we change technology like the public think. They will change a mobile phone at the drop of an apple, but they won't change their television for 20 years. So we have to start to think about exactly how we fit in. That's why they buy the biggest one they can afford. It takes 15 years to pay it off. So let's start. 3D. The future is 3D. I think actually by looking around this place today, you'll probably say, did anybody spot the 3D display? It's just over there. Anybody else spot another one? No, I actually walked around for half an hour this morning trying to find anybody that was doing 3D. So a gallop through 3D very quickly. It's now over 100 years old. Every innovation in 2D has been followed by the same innovation in 3D in less than 2 to 3 years. So when still photography started, 3D still photography came almost immediately afterwards. When movies started, movies came almost immediately afterwards. The earliest known completed film in 3D was shown in Los Angeles in 1922. And the patent for the half-silver mirror for 3D was done in 1953. So I think you can see that it's quite an old, well-established technology. It arrived at the wrong time. It arrived before we had finished the transition to HD. Therefore, it meant that people were buying televisions across the transition, which is always a bad thing to do. It doubles the infrastructure, or it started to double the infrastructure. It was being introduced at the time we hadn't fully re-equipped to HD, so it was looking like we would have to re-equip again. 2D and 3D production doesn't sit well together at the moment, although that actually is changing slowly. And if you look at the actual amount of equipment you needed, it was huge. And also, there was no guidance floating around. There were movies made quite well in 3D, but we don't have movie budgets, we don't have movie time. And I think the critical thing you learn when you start to do HD on your first shoot is time. Time and experience are vital. But the BBC is doing a 2-year trial. We're trying every genre we can think of, so from sport, children in need, Strictly Come Dancing, which was very successful, animation in Planet Dinosaurs, very successful tops and tails in the Olympics. The Olympics were okay. I think they suffered from being an add-on. If anybody did watch the Olympics, anybody watch the opening and closing in 3D? Yeah, it did look like it was an add-on, didn't it, to the main coverage, and it was provided by OBS, and it should have had more cameras there. It should have had more time spent on it, but it worked, and it was pretty good. Last night of the proms was, I think, probably an amazing piece of 3D. We really enjoyed doing that. We tried some new cameras, some new positions that we would not have been allowed to use in 2D. We said it wouldn't work without those positions, so we got some new camera positions in there. And for those who love children's books, Mr. Stink by David with David Walliams is actually in production now for transmission over Christmas. So we're doing a single camera drama, and that sort of completes our portfolio. We've got a couple more programs we want to try next year, but we're coming towards the end of the trial where we've got to make a decision about what we do next. And looking around at the industry, it's not going to be easy to make that decision. We have got delivery methods that we're looking at. Obviously BBC Films has been making movies in 3D. Street Dance 2 was obviously made in 3D. Street Dance 1 was converted. iPlayer, we've done some very successful trials on iPlayer. The most successful one being the Dinosaurs program that we put out at 1920 1080 for the first time on iPlayer, and we're beginning now to look at live HD on iPlayer and live 3D. Once we can do HD on iPlayer live, we'll be able to do 3D. So that does give us a very nice road to event-driven 3D without having to open a channel, especially to do it. The 3 rules that I have, another 3 rules I have, are very, very simple. If 3D is going to happen, or it just will die again, it's really got to have the following 3 things. No additional requirement for acquisition. That means you go out and you shoot 2D and 3D together. We're just beginning to see that happening, but it's still quite embryonic and early, and we're still making compromises between the two to try and get it to work well. There's got to be no overhead in post-production and delivery. That usually happens. The more you use it, the cheaper it gets. But at the moment, there's quite a large overhead. And by overhead for delivery, I mean that the set-top box will convert it to 2D. We only transmit one version of the program. So that does mean we have to look at how we make those programs and what type of programs we make so that they are 2D compatible as well as 3D compatible, depending which way round you look at it. And the final one, I think everybody's agreed, is there is a barrier to watching 3D, which is the glasses. If you wear glasses, they're very uncomfortable on top of your glasses. If you don't wear glasses, you just don't like wearing glasses, so you don't put them on for that long. I've seen people in cinemas taking them off halfway through and sort of squinting at the screen because actually they don't want to wear the glasses anymore. If it does fail, by the way, and goes away, one thing I have noticed is that 3D comes around once every 30 years. It's almost regular as clockwork. So if it does fail, just look out for 3D in 2040, because I think that might be a quite interesting one to have a look at. So quiz number 2 for you. With all technologies, there is a cost involved, and that cost tends to decrease either as the technology evolves itself or as other technologies help us along. And one of those technologies that's helping us along is storage cost. Today, a 270 megabit SD program takes about 122 gigabytes to store. The cost of the disk, the hard disk to store that on, is about $25. It's actually a lot lower than $25, but you can't buy disks that small anymore. Does anybody want to hazard a guess at how much it would have cost us to store that same program when SDI first came out in the late 80s? Anybody want to hazard a guess at that? Nope. It was actually $4.2 million for the same storage. If you go back and have a look at the websites, there are plenty of websites that tell you what storage rates and how fast they're decreasing. To store that amount of material, 122 gigabytes of material, would have cost $4.2 million, and it was not fast enough to play it back. So today, moving on, we can do HD program. It's about 675 gigs for a 1 hour's HD program. That's uncompressed, about $40 for the disk. When we started HD in 2000, it was about $4,700 for the same amount of storage. Again, not fast enough to play it back, but that's a 1,000 to 1 decrease. The reason for saying this, the reason for bringing you to this, is to have now a look at the level of storage we need for the 2 ultra-high definition standards. So I'm going to concentrate on the super high vision, which is 8K as people have called it, which for a 1 hour program is around 28, well, just short of 29 terabytes of storage. So today that actually costs around £1,500, or dollars, sorry, $1,500. It is certainly not fast enough to play it back, but actually you could store that amount of information on about $1,500 worth of drive. Doing a straight line computation, working out what disk prices have done over the last 5 years and doing a straight line computation for when NHK launched the service in, say, 2020 to 2025, that storage will possibly be around $15. So it does, now if Moore's law still kicks in, it will be in about $10, $5, or even $3 for that amount of storage. And I think you'll see that what we're seeing is the ability to do new technologies linked to other technologies. In other words, storage, speed of networks, network contention, gradually begins to disappear. Now, I know if you built your building and your infrastructure too early, you'll never do it. But actually, others won't have done it, so you will see it begin to appear. So let's start having a look about the future being big. And there's a lot of discussion about what this is called. Sony now have stuck to their guns and called it 4K with a capital K. Others are calling it 4K with a small k, which means it's 4096 wide. The Consumer Association came up with the terminology ultra high definition or ultra HD, which is the preferred wording for it, because we're not talking of something that's 4K wide. We're talking of something based on the standard television aspect ratios. So for us, 4K is actually 3840. Now, I'm sure there'll be some consumer organisations that have a point of view if we start saying it's 4K and the public saying, but it's not 4K, but I'm sure that'll come later. So it's 4 times HD. It's designed for screens of 75 inches or larger, which, as you've probably seen, are now beginning to hit the shops. Okay, yes, they're costing £12,000 to £15,000, but, and I was talking to someone who actually was working in Selfridges, and is now working on one of the stands here, at the time the first flat screens arrived, and they, guess what, were £10,000 to £12,000 when they first arrived. So again, looking at the technology, you can now buy that same set in Tesco's probably for under £500. So again, looking at the technology advance, don't think these are frightening numbers and they will never happen. They are just beginning to happen and they will drop. So this gives us 20 times the SD resolution, and we will still sit 2.7 meters away from our telly because we've never moved. Our living rooms are 2.7 meters from couch to telly, and if you have a bigger room, you move the couch forward. You don't push it back against the wall. I've spotted that, and again, just go home and measure it. If it's not 2.7 meters, plus or minus a bit, you can send me an email. What's happening in production? Well, as you've seen, it's all over the place here. There are cameras perfectly capable of doing 4K, and some of them are actually beginning to hit what I call reasonable price points for use. There's test material around. The EBU has test material for checking end-to-end systems, and it's a viable option. What does it mean, though? What actually is happening about it? For the consumer, my question is, why? Why 4K? Is it big enough from 1080p? Well, probably you could persuade them it is. What's the benefit? Is there going to be lots of content out there? That's to be seen. And is it beginning to cause technology fatigue? In other words, 3D's only just hit them, and we're now saying within 24 months of buying a 3D set, go out and buy a 4K set. So I'm concerned. For the broadcaster, what's the commercial benefit? Are we going to recoup any money back? Are companies like Sky, Virgin, BT going to be able to charge extra premiums for watching it? Will they be able to recoup their investment in programs and infrastructure if they do? It will require a total refit. But also, one thing the broadcasters are very, very aware of is there's another system just sitting waiting, just behind it, ultra-high definition level 2, which is the Japanese super high vision system that we used on the Olympics. Of course, one thing about 4K is you can say ultra-high definition level 1 is, of course, it's 3D, and it's 3D as a given. And if you look around at some of the sets, one of my ticks has been, well, boxes have been ticked, in that it's auto stereo. So a lot of the 4K sets we'll see, advertised 4K, ultra-high definition sets we'll see, will be auto stereo. So that's a box tick. So bear that in mind. 3D isn't dead. It may just go away and come back again as something else. So is the future bigger? let's just move out a little bit further. For those of you, did anybody see the super high vision presentations of the Olympics? I have a feeling you'll think it is another generation of television. It's 16 times high definition or 82 times standard definition. It has 50, 60 and 120 progressive frames a second as standard. It does 24 and 25 as well, but the key ones are that it's moving to a world standard of 120 frames a second. To be discussed. We'll talk about that one later. It's 60 by 9 aspect ratio. I think that's a shame. I think we should start to broaden our horizons or widen our eyes. It's super high vision, for those of you who see it, is the NHK version of ultra high definition level 2, or 8K as it will be called. It's because it comes as a package with, of course, the new sound system of 22.2 surround sound. And it's intended for launch in Japan 2020 to 2025. They want to start trials 2020, 2025. Now, the interesting thing about this is, anybody that went to IBC, and I think Sony was showing it over there on their presentation area, was showing that we already are capable of transmitting 4K, ultra high definition level 1. It's taking a whole transponder. On the EBU booth, there was a very little demonstration of HEVC, which is the next generation H.265 encoding, which was taking 50p. Remember, Sony's was only 30p. Was taking 50p ultra high definition and squeezing it into 10 megs. Not only squeezing it to 10 megs virtually transparently, with a little bit of degradation, it was down at 6, with something not worse than I've seen on there on some channels, down as low as 2. So there is viability in getting it to the public, even though there is not viability in us making it yet. That does mean that 8K could well fit inside a transponder or a DTT multiplex. I mean, maybe one channel, but it will fit in. And that's very interesting to the Japanese, because that starts their terrestrial commitment to transmit ultra-high definition television or super high vision by 2020. What did we do for the Olympics? We had public viewings. There were 3 screens in the UK, plus 3 in Japan, 1 in the USA. There was a VIP screen at the Olympic site, which was fed uncompressed by fibre back from Television Centre, and there was a showcase at Essex University. So there was a lot going on. For those that didn't see any of the trucks, there were 2 trucks. This is the specially flown over, or shipped over, I should say, vision truck, very Japanese looking vision truck, super high vision on the front. It had an 8-input vision mixer. There were 3 super high vision cameras, and each camera, anybody remember the ME 2001 camera? No? Oh, good. 4 tube cameras. These are 4 sensor cameras, so there are 2 greens, a red and a blue. Each sensor is 1.25 inches, so slightly bigger than the larger sensors we're seeing around here on them. The focus is so critical, it's not done by the cameraman. It's actually done by a vision engineer inside the OB truck, because they need a large screen to focus with. It's actually mapped, because they can't get the big enough screens in the truck. They use pixel mapping, so they use a smaller area of the screen and they pixel map an 8K image onto a 4K display to try and do it. And the monitoring, the sound monitoring, is a 5.1 mixdown to give the idea, so they can motivate the cuts by the crowd noise. The audio truck had a 22.2 audio mixing desk, a 22.2 audio monitoring system, had a 3D sound 22.2 or 22 channel reverb unit in it to actually take sound from the mics, because they weren't allowed to mic up the whole area for 22.2, so they took the incoming feeds and they added 22 channel reverb to them to mix in. For those of you who want to see what the microphone looked like, it's that rather large ball there. It's got 3 layers inside it, an upper, middle and lower layer. Each layer is divided into 8 cells. Each cell has a microphone in it. So it's quite an amazing beast, is the only thing you describe it. There's a few ambience microphones attached to it, and that's on the top of the R&D building last IBC. We couldn't get a picture of it in situ at the Olympics. Television Centre is a small studio that used to be used for CBeebies. It's now they're up here. It's empty, so R&D have it, and they built a super high vision studio gallery in it, which consisted of a 128 by 128 matrix that was paralleled up for 8 inputs. So each input used 16 slots. They're mad. They're completely insane, the Japanese. But yeah, so 128 matrix came down to 16 slots. Had 2 editing systems and 2 audio systems built in there. The recorders are actually 17 P2 card recorders, each recorder. So that's 16. They split the picture into 16 images, 16 HD images, and 1 standard HD proxy. So it's a massive, great beast of recording devices. And it had an 85-inch full-resolution display in there for monitoring. Also had a 222-point audio replay system. One was absolutely fantastic, set up in what was the old music listening room. And you got this amazing feeling that you were walking into the middle of a stadium every time you walked in when it was on. It was actually, for those of you really interested, we delivered it by internet. And some of it was the standard internet. So again, this is about booking pipelines and using things. It's about the technology that's out there. In the UK, we were using the Janet academic internet infrastructure to get it to the preview theatres. But there were some links that were by standard internet connection. And it's very interesting to see that the newer technologies cannot look at traditional contribution circuits. We're having to look at IP circuits straight away. This is going to feed back into what we're doing currently, because if you can synchronize 16 IP packets, 16 video streams into IP packets, you can do it dead easily with one HD one. And for the first time ever, we'll be able to use screen grabs. This is not anywhere near a full resolution screen grab. It will make my presentation far too large to carry around, but this is a screen grab of the opening ceremony. So that's super high vision. So what else is coming up? The one complaint that people had watching super high vision was the lack of resolution when things moved. In other words, there were issues around cameras moving too fast and losing resolution. So, we've been stuck with 50 and 60 hertz for a long time, 50, 60 frames a second. It's okay for SD, but I don't think it's good for HD. There's a picture, something moving. R&D like to play with trains, something static. You can see there's blur on the piece of the image that's moving, and the static bit is perfectly clear. And the loss of resolution takes an HD image down to as low as an SD image when there is movement. You can see that is an accurate representation of the two. Obviously, the SD image is steppy, the HD image is just blurry. So we need to increase the frame rates, and ultra-high definition, it's been suggested, is 120 frames a second as its starting point. We think probably we may need to go up to 300 frames a second. So again, I'll let you think about that for the future. It might be quite interesting. We keep forgetting about sound, obviously. Mentioned 22.2, so the future is full of ears. Audio is getting bigger. We started with 1.0, if you want to do it in the new way of speaking, all the way through now to 10.2 and 22.2. Both of these are proposed systems to go with ultra-high definition. 10.2 may go with level 1, 22.2 with level 2. That's still to be decided, and for those who want to see what your front room will look like, it'll look roughly like that. So, coming to the end now, my prediction for the future. So what is the television going to look like in 2020? So the first thing I'm going to say is going to be agile. What does that mean? Well, actually, it means you're going to be able to change the software inside it much more easily than you can now. But what's it going to be primarily aimed at? It's going to be 4,000 lines, or 4,032 lines. It's going to be capable of 300 frames a second. It's going to have a 21:9 aspect ratio. Actually, I'll say minimum 21:9 aspect ratio. It's going to be 3D without glasses, and it's going to have 22.2 audio from a single source. So not like the living room of the future with surrounded in speakers. So quiz number 3, what can you buy today? So out of that lot, what can you buy? Okay. Actually, you can buy all of it. That's last year's CES. That's a 300 hertz Panasonic television already there. It's 3D, but it's 300 frames a second effectively. That's a 21 by 9. There are now 2 or 3 manufacturers doing 21 by 90 screens. This one is a little more difficult to actually say. This is a 4K television with no glasses for 3D. So that's already out there. And there is a 5.1, actually it's a 7.1 audio system from a bar. Actually, the 0.1, I will give it, we have to have 2 subs because I don't think you'll be able to squeeze those in. So you can buy the whole lot today. It's just combining those technologies into one lump that we can afford to buy will be the difficult bit. So what I really want to say is the future of anything is just annoying. It's going to keep getting annoying, and we're going to have to learn to live with it. Or we can actually just put these on and forget it. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I'm around if you want questions, so thank you.